Hello, G5 Scholars at Match. Great job using your resources and clicking on this video to help you answer this problems for math assignment number 1, week of May 4th. So the goal of this video is to learn how to divide fractions, and specifically how to divide fractions by whole numbers. And we're going to do this by going through anchor task number 1 and math assignment number 1. If you're having trouble finding that, you can go and look at the comments of this YouTube video or go on the Google site for G5 or Google Classroom. Either way, you need to have this Google form open before you keep going on this video. I also recommend that you get a piece of paper and something to write with and on so that you can work yourself as we go through each part and then look at your thinking later on when you try to finish the rest of the assignment. So to begin, we're going to go through anchor task number 1 using the steps of the anchor chart you can find on the Google site or Google Classroom. I'm going to read each part of the question and then go through each step one by one. So anchor task number 1 says Nolan gives some fruit by the foot to his 3 friends to share equally. So for each part of this problem, we're deciding how much of this fruit by the foot does each of his friends get. So let's read part A first. So 1A says, if he has 3 feet of fruit by the foot and wants to share with 3 friends equally, how many feet of fruit by the foot will each friend receive? It's a little bit of a tongue twister. So for 1A, the first thing I'm going to do is look at my anchor chart. It says, what fraction are you breaking into groups? Draw a tape model to represent your fraction. Well, for the first one, we're not at fractions yet, so we're just thinking, what number are we breaking into groups? In this case, we're saying how much of each fruit by the foot does each friend get? So we have 3 feet of fruit by the foot that we're breaking into groups. So I'm going to go back and draw that for myself. So I have that's a little thin. I have 1, 2, 3 fruit by the foot. I'm also going to start by writing a division problem to help me answer this problem. So first I'm going to write the number I'm breaking into groups. So that's this 3. Okay, so now I'm going back to the problem. Number 2 says how many groups are we breaking the fraction, or in our case, the number into? So if he has 3 feet and is sharing with 3 friends, that means he's breaking up the fruit by the foot into 3 groups. So 1, 2, 3 friends. So I'm going to go update my problem based on this. So if I have this number 3 that I'm dividing into 3 groups. So I have 3 divided by 3. I'm also going to draw these groups in this case just to help me give a better idea of how many groups I have. So these are what I'm using to represent the 3 friends or the 3 groups that I'm making. Now the anchor chart says, how can you evenly divide the fraction or this number into the number of groups? So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3 feet. And to evenly distribute into the groups, all I need to do is put 1 in each group. So 1, 1, 1. So to evenly divide my number into groups, all I have to do is put 1 foot into each group. So this also tells me that 3 divided by 3 equals 1. Finally, I'm looking what fraction will be in each group, and this gives me my answer. So in this case, 1 will be in each group. So 1 fruit by the foot is in each group. Finally, I'm going to check my work, and I check my work by saying if I have 3 groups of 1, does that equal the number I started with? And that equals 3, so I'm correct. Take a second to write this down and prepare for the next problem. You can pause here if you need to review what we just did. Now we have B. B reads, if he has 1 foot of fruit by the foot and wants to share with 3 friends equally, how many feet of fruit by the foot will each friend receive? So I'm going to start at the top again. What number am I breaking into groups? In this case, I'm breaking, answer for yourself. What number do you think we're breaking into groups? So in this case, we're breaking 1 foot of fruit by the foot into groups. So I'm going to go back to my question that I had before, and I'm going to erase them. I'm going to erase. So the thing I'll start by doing is saying, what am I breaking into groups? So I have 1 foot, so just 1 foot, this is my full foot of fruit by the foot that I'm breaking into groups. Next I go to number 2. How many groups are you breaking this number into? So I have 1, and I'm breaking it just like the last one into 3 groups. So I'm saying divided by 3. I'm breaking it into 3 groups, and then I'm going to draw my groups again. 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, not the best circles. Then I'm going back and I'm reading from my anchor chart. How can you evenly divide the fraction into the number of groups? Well, this is where it gets a little bit trickier because I have 1 whole, but I can't put 1 whole into each group this time. I have to think about a way to evenly divide these. So to evenly divide this whole, and I'm going to draw it like this so we can see it a little bit better. I have 1 whole. To evenly divide this whole, I'm going to divide my whole into 3. So 1, 2, 3. Now I'm thinking to myself, how many pieces do I have altogether? I have 3. And how many pieces am I putting into each group? So number 4, what new fraction will be in each group? Well, if I have 3 pieces total, then I'm putting 1 piece into each group. So that's 1/3. So now into each of my circles, into each of my groups, I'm writing 1/3, or the amount of fruit by the foot, 1/3 of a foot. Finally, check my work. If I have 3 groups, of 1/3, I equal 3/3, which is also equal to 1. So I am back to the number I started with. Next, I'm moving on to part C. Part C says, if he has 1/2 foot of fruit by the foot and wants to share with 3 friends equally, how many feet of fruit by the foot will each friend receive? So again, I'm going back to my anchor chart. Number 1, what fraction are you breaking into groups? So here, it's the first time I actually have a fraction. I'm breaking 1/2 foot of fruit by the foot into 3 groups. So I'm going to go write that on my own. So the first thing I'm doing is drawing a tape model to show 1/2 fruit by the foot. 1/2 foot. Oops. So I can do that by writing 1 whole and then dividing it into the number of parts needed for 1/2. So in this case, it's 2 parts. So I have 1/2, and I'm going to color in that 1/2 that I'm using. So now I have 1/2, and I'm moving on to part 2. Number 2, how many groups are you breaking the fraction into? So just like the previous problems, we're breaking it into 3 groups. So 1, 2, 3. That means I'm dividing by 3. Now I go on to the next step. Step 3. How can you evenly divide the fraction into the number of groups? Well, I know that I can now split this whole into 3 in order to figure out how many I need for each group. What do you think that would look like? Try to answer it for yourself. So looking at this whole, I'm going to draw 3 lines to evenly divide that 1/2 into 3 groups. So now I'm thinking to myself, what next? Okay, step number 4. What new fraction will be in each group? So if I have 1/2 total, this is the half that I'm deciding is going into each group. So one of these pieces each is going into each group. But now I have to think, what is this new fraction that I'm using to describe each of these pieces? The first thing I'm thinking to myself is, how many pieces do I have total? So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces total. Then I'm thinking, how many is going in each group? So just one of these pieces is going into each group. So that's 1/6. So the answer to what fraction will be going into each group is 1/6. I can also write this here just so I can demonstrate to myself a little bit better. Each friend is getting 1/6 foot of fruit by the foot. Finally, I'm going to check my work. So I'm saying if I have 3 groups of 1/6, I have 3/6. That also equals 1/2, so I'm at the number I started with. So I know that I am correct. Finally, the last problem says, if he is 1/3 foot of fruit by the foot and wants to share with 3 friends equally, how many feet of fruit by the foot will each friend receive? I'm going to do the first step with you together, but then you'll try to do the rest on your own and check back here after you finish. So step 1 says, what fraction are we breaking into groups? So I know that I'm going to start by drawing that fraction. So part D says 1/3. So I'm going to draw one whole and break it into 3 pieces. So this is my 1/3. I'm also going to color in that 1/3 that he has. So this is the 1/3 fruit by the foot he has. What will you do next? Pause the video and then check back here after you try it yourself. Okay, so part 2 says how many groups. So if I have 1/2 and I'm dividing it into 3 groups, that means that I have 3 groups. Dividing it between 3 friends, that means I have 3 friends that I'm dividing it between. So I have 1/2 divided by 3. I'm also going to draw those groups here. And next, step 3, how can you evenly divide the fraction into the number of groups? Well, again, I'm going to divide the fraction so that I have an even number in each group. So I can just draw this through here, and I can put one piece now in each group. Finally, I'm dividing what new fraction will be in each group. So I'll start by looking at my total. Oops. I saw that I made a mistake. I actually have 1/3 divided by 3. So again, I'm looking at my problem, looking at my whole. How many pieces do I have in my whole? I have 9 pieces. How many of those pieces is going into each group? Well, I have this 1/3 that I'm putting into groups. So one piece is going into each group. So I have 1/9 in each group. So my answer